Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them Jesus addressed this parable. A man had two sons. The younger son said to his father, "Father, give me a share of your estate that should come to me." So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son set off for a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck the country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. He longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but no one gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough to eat, and here I am dying from hunger? I shall get up and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But the father ordered his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has now come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked him what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry and refused to enter the house. His father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders, and you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughtered the fattened calf.' He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me always, and everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.'" Hello and welcome to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join him. What sort of man is this who eats with tax collectors and sinners? Interesting question. Interesting question. Let me ask you this. Where do you think the Son of Man would hang out today? Who do you think God would hang out with? You'd think he'd go in our churches and make sure the choirs were just so? Doubt it. You'd think he'd go to some of our meetings where people jump up and start talking about Robert's Rules of Order and whether or not we're doing this correctly? You'd think he'd go to our Ladies' Altar Society who have a squabble about whether or not we're having ham or turkey for the Thanksgiving social? I'm not real sure about that. I'm not mocking this. I'm not mocking this, but this gospel tells us that our Lord came to save those who are lost. He came for those who are lost. And how many of us think that if I'm going to imitate the example of Christ, I need to stay away from people like that? I shouldn't be around those people. Those are bad people. They're sinners. How many of us are worried that if we hang around them, what other people are going to say? Early on in my priesthood, I had a call. I mean, wee hours of the morning, 11:30 at night. Hysterical girl that I had been counseling, and she was scared. She lived in an apartment, and she had been beat up by her boyfriend, and she was scared, and she was screaming. She wanted me to come over. Okay. Let's see, what do I do? It's 11:30 at night. I'm going to a single woman's apartment. Now, if I don't wear my collar, I know there are other parishioners who live in that apartment complex. And if somebody sees me, gets in his street clothes and he goes in there at 11:30 at night, must be sneaking around, huh? Then, wear my coat and collar and go walking 11:30 at night, knocking on a single woman's door. Oh, well, I guess he's collecting for the poor at 11:30 at night, huh? It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I wore my collar, okay? Wore my collar. I went. Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea what people thought or said. But I knew it had to be done. She needed someone there at that time. And that challenge of, do I or don't I? Do I try to help them? What if someone misunderstands it? What if someone sees it and thinks that I'm not what I should be? Or they get the wrong impression about it? And obviously, okay? No, I'm not going into strip clubs to see if I can convert the dancers. No, I'm not talking about stupid stuff like that. But I am saying that more often than not, when we have an opportunity to respond to the gospel, do we worry about what other people are going to think, or do we worry about what God is asking of us at this point in time? And that's a difficult place to be. I'm not giving you a ready solution because I don't have the perfect answer, because I know how people can be. But at the same time, sometimes you just got to do it. And so when the Pharisees looked at Jesus and said, who is this guy? He's supposed to be holy and he's supposed to be this, and he hangs out with tax collectors and he hangs out with prostitutes and he hangs out with lepers and everything. He can't be that great if that's the kind of friends he has. And the reality is that more often than not, the people who are in need are not the people sitting next to us in church, although they can be sometimes. But more often than not, the people who are in need are people who are on the fringes, somewhat disenfranchised, no longer mainstream, and we need to reach out to them. There are prudent things that you can do. You marry, the husband and wife go together, or, you bring a child with her. If it's normal hours and stuff like that. We have a St. Vincent de Paul. We don't ever allow someone to go alone by themselves to anywhere. It's the Legion of Mary, when they go out and they visit homes, they go in pairs, and that's just kind of a safety in numbers things. But the question is this: do we walk away from what God is asking of us because we're scared of what people are going to think of us? And his whole life was for those people who society wanted to have nothing to do with. You're talking about lepers? And they have no idea. They have no idea exactly what the lepers were. You know, sometimes some scripture scholars have said they may have just been people who were epileptic and had fits, and people thought there was, some type of demonic possession going on because they had a seizure or whatever, okay? But the lepers weren't even allowed in the town. They couldn't come in the city gate because they were thought to be unclean. And Jesus went out among the lepers and laid hands on them and cured them and did all these different things. And then he comes back, he wants to come to my house and visit with me. And then he goes to Zacchaeus, a little short guy up in the tree, who was basically a tax collector, was a public extortionist in those days. And he hangs around with people like that. And then he says he's the Son of God. And then he says he's so holy. And then he said, I am he who is to come and stuff like that. What are we supposed to believe? I mean, if he's really that holy, for God's sakes, doesn't he know what these people are like? Doesn't he know the disease they have? Doesn't he know the moral depravity that they live in? If he's so high and mighty, that challenge. It's a challenge for all of us to understand that he came for those people. It's very clear. It's not the well man who needs a doctor. It's a sick man. I've come to search out and save those who are lost. And how many times do we get in our holy moods, and we don't want to be around those people. And sometimes when they come in church, and we've seen it. I mean, listen, if you've ever lived in a small town, confession is secondhand news, okay? Trust me. Everybody in town talks about it. And then when some of these people who have had problems or they publicly, some of their faults or failings or sins are known publicly, let them come sit in church and, did you see? I can't believe they had the nerve to come prancing up there in church like nothing had ever happened. Excuse me, who in the hell do you think you are? Who do you think you are? I didn't see God writing your name down on that pew either. They're not there because they're high and mighty. They're there because they're one of us. They're sinners. They need God's mercy. They need God's love. They need the grace of the sacraments to help them with the struggles that everyone in town knows about. And that is the preface for the parable that Jesus is about to tell us. And that is, it's not just about the prodigal son. It's about the resentful and somewhat self-righteous brother. And oftentimes, we need to understand that in all of our holiness, in all of our prayerfulness, in all of our devotions, sometimes we don't really come off as someone who imitates Christ. We come off as people who think we are holier than thou. And spiritual pride and religious self-righteousness has drawn many people out of the church. Not doctrine, not infallibility, not papal decrees, but smug people who think they're holier than everyone else. That's a challenge for a lot of people getting in church. Stay with us. We'll talk more about this when we come back. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bae from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important.
Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you.
He said to his father in reply, "Look, all these years I've served you, and not once did I disobey your orders, and you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughter the fattened calf." He said to him, "My son, you're here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." Amazing grace. Hello and welcome back to Closer Walk. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. This is a tale of two brothers. The stupidity of youth. Welcome to the club. Been there, done that, got the bumper sticker. And I love what I think it was Churchill said, if you're not liberal at 20, you have no heart. If you're not conservative at 40, you got no brain. We've all been through it. We've all thought we had the world by the tail. We've all thought the world was our oyster. We've all thought we were bigger than life and we were invincible. And life has tamed most of us anyway, maybe except Willie Nelson, who knows what he's doing. But anyway, life has tamed most of us. And as usual, you know, it was the greed of youth. One of the things that I used to always do with high school students when I was in vocation work was ask the difference between what separates a kid from an adult. What makes you an adult? They came up with 11 different, you got to pay taxes. Well, that happens once you start working anyway. But I said the difference between an adult and a child is an adult realizes it's his turn to take care of the next generation. I know 15-year-old adults. I know 65-year-old kids. The adult is the one who realizes it's really not all about me. My legacy is in the hearts and the minds of those that I love and that I do for and that I care for. That's the legacy. And that's when you know you've grown up. But the reality is that it was all about this young guy. It was all about this young guy. Wanted his life. There was a much bigger world out there than this stupid pig farm, and I need to go experience life and experience the world, and I got a pocket full of money, and and then you fall flat on your face. And the interesting thing is the dad spotted him before he spotted the dad. God's waiting. God's waiting. And when people say, why does God let that happen? Why did God let me go through that? Because he wanted you to see how stupid you were. It's called free will. It's called free will. I don't know about you, but some of my biggest mistakes have been my greatest opportunities for learning. And I made some big ones. I think I've learned from most of them. I hope I did. But the reality is that, God's waiting. The door is never closed. And he never quits looking out the door to see whether or not you're coming. He's not interested in excuses. He's not interested in explanations. He just wants you back. He just wants you back. Years ago, I was a young priest, and we used to have these penance services, and they're way too long, but anyway, we would have a sermon. Another young priest, he asked a question. He said, what's the worst thing you can do? What's the worst sin anyone could ever commit? Apostasy? Murder? No. He said, the worst thing you could ever do is try to kill God. And he said, you know what? And when they did, the last thing he uttered was, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. There's nothing we do. There's nothing we do beyond the love, the mercy, the forgiveness of God. And God's always waiting on us to come back. He doesn't want to know how stupid we were. He doesn't want to know why we were stupid. He just wants to know that we want back. We want to be in the Father's house. We want to live the way the Father wants us to live. We want to do the things the Father wants us to do. That's what he's waiting for. You realize how many people, and I hit this a lot with terminally ill people, they get worried. Oh, Father, I hope God's got a bad memory, because man, they go on and on and on, and I was 18 years old and I did this, and it's been 70 years ago, okay? But they go on and on. I don't know if God will forgive me for everything that I've done. And I just, it amazes me. It amazes me. I mean, because, thank God I still have my parents. They had 4 boys in 6 years. My mother worked for every gray hair she's got, although, you can't see it because she and her beautician got this thing going. But anyway, she worked for all of her gray hairs. And we did, these 4 boys did more stupid things. And now they don't remember that we wrecked a car when we were 17 because we had been drinking or speeding or doing. They don't remember that. They don't tell us about every mistake we ever made. They're just glad we are who we are. They don't make us pay for the past. I mean, and I'm sure there were many times in the past they could have choked us with a good heart and gotten a good night's sleep. They don't remember that. They're just glad that we're responsible, that we're adult, that we're loving, that we try to be pleasing in the sight of God. They're grateful for that. They've forgotten all that past. And if we as humans can forget the past of people, those that we love, infinitely, how much more does God say, I'm not worried about that. Look at who you are. Look at what you've become. That's what I love about you. You learn from it. You become a better person. You become a stronger person. Your faith has really become important in your life. I'm rejoicing with you. Welcome home. And boy, the son in the backyard, major attitude. There's great virtue in doing the right thing. But if the only virtue is you never got in trouble, there's not much virtue to that at all. If you resent, and I've had this happen, Father, I don't understand, this annulment stuff. I just think that's the Catholic Church's way of granting divorces and making a lot of money. See that old woman over there? I've been with her 56 years. And let me tell you, it's been hell, but I stayed with her. Oh, wonderful. Congratulations. I'm so glad your sacrament of marriage meant so much to you. He's angry because he's had a bad life. And no, I presume he was faithful. I presume he never broke his marriage vows, and he was miserable the whole time. And that challenge in our own lives is to see the grace and to see the joy that comes from being and becoming what God asks of us. And if you look back and you have resentments because, all these other people got to go out there and sow their wild oats, and here I was trying to be a good person. All these other people got to go out there and do this, and here I was trying to follow the rules, and all these other people got to party like you know what, and here I was trying to. Hey, look, the grace comes, and knowing that I've never left the Father's house. The grace comes that, thank God, at an early age, God gave me a desire to be pleasing in His sight. And you know, I live that way. I live that way. And no, I don't have all my war stories, and I don't have all these great tales, and I can't swap, stories about how crazy I was. But guess what? I've been happy. I've never really wanted. I've always been grateful for what is. You know, that longing that people have in life and want to see what's out there and want to see what's next and feel like I've never had that. I've always been happy with what God has given me and always had a great sense of gratitude. That's what we're called to be. And if it's, well, what the heck? Well, then I should have gone out and spent all your money on prostitutes and I could have gotten a calf. Oh, give me a break. That's not what it's about. And if you've gotten no joy, from living a life that hopefully is pleasing in the sight of God, if that's not brought you great comfort, if that's not brought you a great sense of joy and a great sense of happiness and, of being glad of what God has given you, then something's wrong. Something's really wrong. And if you resent people who've done it up and then they've repented, well, not done it for the right reason. That's the challenge. That's the challenge. To find joy in being in the Father's house. Whether you've sowed your wild oats or whether you've been eating at His table every day, the understanding is that joy comes from being in the presence of the Father's house. And not to have had that in life and to have lived what you thought was a holy and virtuous life, but now you've got nothing to show for it except, a very boring life story, then you've missed something along the way. You really have missed something. The joy that the Father always wants us. And some people didn't get it at first. Others got it from the very beginning. If that doesn't make you very happy and very proud, you've not done it for the right reason. That's our challenge, to know always He's waiting. He's not going to make us. He's not going to force us. He's not going to grab us by the collar. But trust me, He's standing at the door. He's waiting. We're welcome. And God wants us back. I don't care where you've been, what you've done. It's nothing worse than killing God. And He said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Come back. Easter's a great time to come back. Come back and share in the joy of the risen Lord this Lent. Going to confession and coming back, knowing the door's open and the Father's standing in it. Thank you for being with us. God bless you. And may each day bring you close in your walk with the Lord.